To be honest, the current state of discourse around the WNBA has turned into something far more intense than expected, and it all centers around the tension between recognizing star power and maintaining league pride. When Sue Bird voiced her frustrations, particularly in response to commentators like Stephen A. Smith and Shannon Sharp, the conversation around Caitlin Clark exploded once again. Bird seemed genuinely frustrated that the league's hard work and progress were being overshadowed by talk that without Clark, the WNBA just doesn't hold the same value. And that's where this whole controversy truly ignites. On one hand, it's undeniable that Caitlin Clark brought a tidal wave of interest to women's basketball. Her on-court dominance, charisma, and ability to draw in viewers was, and still, is something the league hasn't seen in years. But when playoff viewership took a nosedive and ticket prices were slashed to fill seats, people began to question whether that momentum was ever really sustainable without her. Clark's absence revealed cracks in the system that were too big to ignore, and that's exactly what Stephen A. was pointing out. Sure, he works at ESPN, and Bird questioned whether it was appropriate for someone on the network to be so critical of the league it often covers. But Smith wasn't attacking the league. He was speaking on cold, hard numbers. The stadiums might have looked full, but when you dig deeper and see playoff tickets going for $10, it becomes clear that demand had dropped dramatically, and the league was scrambling to keep the optics intact. Sue Bird, an icon and longtime advocate for the league, wasn't having it. To her, the WNBA's growth needs to be about more than just one player. She saw the lowering of ticket prices not as a failure, but as an accessibility move, a way to make the game more reachable for fans. But others saw it as a desperate attempt to keep the momentum Clark had sparked from completely fizzling out. The disagreement really boiled down to how much weight we should give one player. Smith and Sharp argued that Clark was the engine behind the recent surge in interest, and losing her from the playoff picture had serious consequences. Bird, meanwhile, emphasized that the league has been fighting for respect for years and shouldn't allow itself to be defined by the presence or absence of a single superstar. But numbers don't lie. When Clark was playing, TV ratings surged. The arenas were buzzing, merchandise was flying off the shelves, and suddenly people who never cared about women's basketball were tuning in. That kind of impact can't be dismissed, and yet it feels like parts of the WNBA community are actively trying to minimize it. The critics of Clark seem more interested in nitpicking than in acknowledging what she's done for the sport. Even in the face of constant scrutiny, Clark remains focused, playing at an elite level and continuing to elevate not just herself, but the sport as a whole. Her ability to ignore the noise and still perform at the highest level is something that should be celebrated, not torn down. Yet, instead of widespread applause, Clark has become a lightning rod for criticism. That criticism feels more rooted in discomfort with her rapid rise and the attention she commands than in any legitimate concerns. Clark hasn't done anything wrong. She plays hard, respects the game, and has become the face of a movement that many have long hoped for. And still the backlash comes. What's even more confusing is the hesitation from within the league to fully embrace what she represents. You'd expect everyone to be rallying behind the athlete who finally broke through into the mainstream. But instead, there's this weird energy of protectiveness, like acknowledging her power would somehow diminish the rest of the league. That's where Bird's reaction becomes so fascinating. She's not wrong for wanting the league to thrive on its own terms, but ignoring Clark's role in that progress is just as damaging. When you slash ticket prices and still struggle to fill seats, it says a lot about where the fan interest actually lies. And the fact that those prices dropped right after Clark exited the playoffs only reinforces the point that her presence drove demand. Bird also pointed out that games still looked full, especially in places like Vegas or New York. But the reality is that appearances can be deceiving when you're pricing tickets at less than the cost of a movie. That's not sustainable. The WNBA needs to figure out how to turn the Clark wave into something lasting, rather than trying to downplay her influence. Sheryl Swoopes, another legend of the game, chimed in too, and her views also sparked debate. On one hand, she acknowledged Clark's abilities and her impact. But even her tone suggested that there's a reluctance among veterans to hand the spotlight over so easily. And that's understandable to an extent. These are athletes who fought tooth and nail for visibility, and here comes someone who instantly captures global attention. But Clark didn't ask for this. She earned it with her game, her grit, and her marketability. She became the bridge between hardcore fans and the casual audience the league has always struggled to reach. So, when commentators like Stephen A. Smith or Shannon Sharpe point out the facts, that viewership is way down without Clark, it's not an attack on the league. It's a wake-up call. Hollywood Buzzing covered this perfectly by highlighting that no matter how much pride the league has, it can't afford to ignore what the data says. Attendance stats, ticket prices, and TV ratings all tell a very clear story. When Caitlin Clark is in the mix, the numbers explode. When she's not, the struggle is real. Clark's story is far from over, and the WNBA has an opportunity to use her as a launching pad. But that only works if they stop pretending that she's just another player. She's not. She's a once-in-a-generation talent with the ability to revolutionize the game, to do for women's basketball what Jordan did for the NBA. And yet, instead of building around her and recognizing that, there's this awkward push to dilute her importance. The league should be throwing everything behind her, not just for her sake, but for the future of the sport. The criticism she's faced has often been baseless, rooted more in envy than substance. The irony is that the very people who have been fighting for the WNBA to succeed are the ones now standing in the way of its next breakthrough. This is where the conversation needs to evolve. It's not about choosing between supporting the league or supporting Clark. It's about realizing that supporting her is supporting the league. She's the one pulling in fans, getting national media attention, driving merchandise sales, and putting the WNBA on the map in a way that few others ever have. Hollywood Buzzing nailed it in their coverage. Clark is the spark, the engine, and the opportunity the league has been waiting for. Ignoring that or pretending otherwise only stalls progress. It's time for everyone involved to get on the same page. Clark's success isn't a threat to the WNBA, it's the blueprint. Embrace her impact, leverage the attention, and build a sustainable ecosystem around her presence. That's how the league grows. That's how it thrives. Any other approach is just a missed opportunity, or pretending otherwise only stalls progress. It's time for everyone involved to get on the same page. Clark's success isn't a threat to the WNBA, it's the blueprint. Embrace her impact, leverage the attention, and build a sustainable ecosystem around her presence. That's how the league grows. That's how it thrives. Any other approach is just a missed opportunity,